I was napping when I heard the door click shut. I opened my eyes just in time to see Himi-san slip the keys off the table, quietly, like it was nothing. He didn't say a word, not even goodbye. I wasn't surprised. This wasn't the first time he'd taken something that wasn't his. But this time, it was different. It was my car. By the time I got up, he was already in it, the engine purring as he backed out of the driveway. I didn't rush. I didn't chase. I wasn't confused. I was calculating. I watched from the window as he drove off, and something in me hardened. The neighbors were already talking. I could hear them, whispering. He'd already told them it was for my own safety, that I was too old to drive. Too old for a lot of things, I suppose. Too old to make decisions. Too old to live on my own. Too old to matter. He had the audacity to call me a liability. He was wrong, of course. He was wrong about everything, but it was clear that he thought I was helpless. I wasn't helpless. I didn't cry. I waited. There was no point in tears. I didn't need to beg or shout. I had already decided what came next. When I was young, I had a car that meant everything to me. It wasn't much an old, rusty sedan that I bought with the little savings I had from working long hours at the diner. But it was mine, and it took me places I could never have imagined. It wasn't just a car. It was my freedom. I could go wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. But more than that, it was a lifeline. A promise that there was more out there than just the world I was living in. The first time I drove it, I felt like I had wings. The road stretched out ahead of me like it was mine to conquer. There were no longer any limits. It was just me, the wheel in my hands, the wind in my hair, and the hum of the engine as it carried me far from everything. I remember driving to see my sister on weekends, driving to the grocery store late at night when the kids were asleep. Every turn, every stop felt like an act of defiance against my circumstances, against the world that told me I was too small to make a difference. But soon enough, my freedom turned into responsibility. I didn't mind it. My children were everything. So I drove them to school every morning, rain or shine. I drove to work, did my shifts, and came back home to do it all again. I didn't need anyone to tell me what I had to do. I just did it. There was no second thought, no hesitation. I drove. I waited. I filled tanks when the fridge was empty. I filled empty bellies when my own felt like it might never be full again. Every single ride I took, I carried them with me. I could see their faces, their smiles, their little hands pressed to the window as we drove down the street, even though the car had long stopped smelling new and fresh. It didn't matter. It was theirs. All of it. My car, my love, my sacrifice. Every extra mile I drove, every long shift, every dinner made on a shoestring, I did it for them. It was always for them. I kept going, despite the exhaustion, the ache in my bones. I had the strength to carry them. I carried their dreams too. And when they had friends over, I was the one driving them to the park, to their games, to whatever else they needed. I didn't mind. The laughter in the back seat made it worth it. Their joy made it worth it. I never complained. Never. Not once. It was my job. I didn't want recognition. I didn't want to be praised. But somewhere, deep down, I hoped they would understand. I hoped they would see that I had given everything, all of it, for them, and I would keep doing it, even when my own energy began to wane. Because that's what mothers do, right? We give. We keep giving until there's nothing left. But somewhere along the way, something changed. The days became longer, and my body grew weaker. I couldn't keep up like I used to, and I didn't complain about that either. It was only natural. But there was a quiet hurt, a quiet ache, knowing that what I had done for them, they didn't always see. They took and took, but it was never enough. They didn't see the cost. They never did. It's funny how a car, something as simple as a car, can become a symbol of everything you've sacrificed. A reminder of all the years you've spent making sure others are safe, happy, cared for. I spent so many years driving them that I forgot how to take a moment for myself. I was so focused on their needs that I forgot about my own. But now Now it's different. Now, they were taking something from me. Something I'd earned. Something that had always been mine. I wasn't going to let that happen. Not without a fight. I guess that's where things started to turn. The same car that once carried them to school, to games, to parties, to life itself, was now the thing they were taking from me. And I was starting to realize, maybe it was time I took something back. It's funny how the smallest things start to change. It's like a slow drip, one drop at a time, until you finally notice the whole bucket's full. I didn't realize at first how, could I? But looking back, I see the signs everywhere. Little things that didn't seem like much at the time, but added up to something that I couldn't ignore anymore. It started with the jokes. At first, it was nothing more than a laugh. A light teasing about how I couldn't remember the names of the new neighbors. He'd laugh, shaking his head, as though I were just a little bit slow. "Mom, you really don't remember?" he'd say with a grin. I'd laugh along, because what else was I supposed to do? But there was something in his tone, something sharp underneath the laughter. It wasn't just funny anymore. It was like he was trying to make me feel small, like I was somehow less than I used to be. And then there were the side glances. Those were the ones that stung. When I'd ask a question, he'd look at me, his eyes shifting, like he was waiting for me to catch up, waiting for me to realize that I was falling behind. It didn't matter what I said anymore. The answers I gave didn't seem to matter, and neither did the things I asked about. He started avoiding me more, not in an outright way, but in the little ways. The way he'd take longer to answer the phone when I called. The way he wouldn't visit as often. He wasn't my boy anymore. And then there was the matter of the house. We'd always talked openly, shared things, no barriers between us. But as the months passed, I began to notice that the doors were locked more often. He'd lock the front door when I wasn't looking, even though I never used to lock it. I'd ask him why, and he'd laugh it off as if it were nothing. "Just being careful, Mom," he'd say. "You're not getting any younger." He'd call it protection, like it was his duty to guard me, to shield me from something. But I knew what he was really doing. He wasn't protecting me. He was locking me in. I didn't want to believe it at first. I told myself I was imagining things. I convinced myself that it was just him being cautious. But there was an undercurrent of something darker, a coldness. Like the door wasn't the only thing being locked. My mind started to wander. Was he trying to control me? Was he pushing me out? Or worse, pushing me aside? The real turning point came when he started telling me what I could and couldn't do. It wasn't as obvious at first. It was a suggestion here and there, disguised as concern. "Maybe you shouldn't drive today, Mom. You look a little tired." Or, "I'll take care of that for you. You shouldn't be lifting that anymore." I knew he was trying to help, but it didn't feel like help. It felt like restraint, like he was trying to take away my choices, my independence, bit by bit. It hurt, more than I'd cared to admit. I had spent my whole life taking care of him, doing everything for him, and now here he was, telling me that I couldn't take care of myself. He said he was protecting me, but it was all too clear now that he was protecting himself from the responsibility of having a mother who didn't need him. I couldn't help but feel like I was being slowly erased from the life I had once been such a big part of. Like I was disappearing in front of him, and he didn't even care enough to stop it. The final straw was when he sold the car. I didn't even get a chance to protest. He'd taken it without asking, told me it wasn't safe anymore. He told me he'd be getting me something newer, something safer. But I knew what that meant. It wasn't about safety. It was about control. It was about him taking something that had been mine for years, something I had worked for, something I had used to care for my family, and turning it into a tool to keep me in place. I never said anything. I didn't even argue. But inside, something broke. Maybe it was the way he spoke to me, or maybe it was the way he looked at me, like I was fragile, something to be hidden away. But whatever it was, it changed things. I wasn't the mother anymore. I was the child. I wasn't the one who mattered. I wasn't the one who had a say. He thought he was doing what was best for me. He thought I wouldn't notice. But I did. I saw what he was doing. And deep down, I knew he wasn't my boy anymore. Not the one I had raised. Not the one who had once needed me. Number. He was someone else now. Someone I didn't recognize. The day he took the keys felt like a silent scream. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. But it was enough to freeze me in place. I had seen it coming. In the little ways he chipped away at my independence. But when he took the car, it was different. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about me, who I was, and who I had become in his eyes. I had always prided myself on being self-sufficient. I drove myself to doctor appointments, to the grocery store, to the bank. I didn't need anyone to tell me how to live my life. But after he took my car, the world began to shrink. There were appointments I missed because I couldn't get there without him. He was always too busy, too caught up to take me. "It's too far, Mom," he'd say. "You shouldn't be driving so much anyway." The car, the one thing that had kept me going all these years, was no longer mine. And with it, my sense of self started to slip away. I couldn't get to the doctor's office anymore, not without waiting for him to take me. And when he did, he always made sure I knew how much of an inconvenience I was. He'd sigh when I asked him to drive me somewhere, like it was such a chore. The last time I needed to go to the doctor, I waited over an hour for him to pick me up. He never came. And when he finally did show up, he had that look, the one that told me he was doing me a favor. "You really should be taking better care of yourself," he said, his tone dismissive. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The more I tried to hold on to what was mine, the more he took. And the more he took, the more I felt like I was being erased. He told me it was for my own good, that I couldn't drive anymore, that I was a liability. But it wasn't about my safety. It was about control. And each time he would strip away another part of my life, my pride, my dignity, I would shrink a little more inside. The worst part was how he did it in front of people, in front of everyone who had once seen me as someone capable. He'd make little comments, like how I shouldn't drive anymore, how I needed help with everything. He'd say it with a smile, like it was all part of the joke, but there was nothing funny about it. I saw the way others looked at me, like I was fragile, like I couldn't take care of myself. It was humiliating. I had spent my life proving that I was strong, that I could handle anything, and here he was, turning me into someone I didn't recognize. Someone helpless. It wasn't just the car. It wasn't just the appointments. It was the way he looked at me now, the way he treated me like I was already a burden, like I had nothing left to offer. My voice, once so strong, had been reduced to a whisper. The engine roared as he drove away in my car, and my voice stayed parked, stuck behind the closed doors he had locked me behind. I started to feel like I was living in someone else's world. I wasn't the mother anymore. I wasn't the one people turned to. I wasn't even the woman who had once driven herself everywhere. I was just someone who didn't matter. And that was the hardest part. The betrayal wasn't just in the act itself, it was in the way he looked at me after. Like I was something that needed to be managed, not loved. He didn't see me anymore. He saw the person he thought I was: weak, tired, too old for this world. And the worst part? He convinced himself that he was doing me a favor, that he was helping me by taking my freedom, my voice, my car. But what he didn't realize was that he was taking something much more precious than any car. He was taking my dignity. And once that's gone, there's no getting it back. I didn't say anything. Not right away. I could have screamed. I could have yelled at him. But that wasn't the kind of woman I was. I wasn't some character in a soap opera, throwing tantrums to get attention. No, I had something better. I had my mind, and I had my patience. It wasn't long before I realized I needed to take a different approach. He thought he had won, thought he had stripped me of everything that mattered, but he hadn't. I still had my quiet strength. I still had control over one thing in my life: my thoughts. The first thing I did was find the papers, the ones proving that the car was mine, that it always had been. I knew where they were locked away in the drawer, where I kept everything important. It was the one place he hadn't dared to touch. Not yet, anyway. When I opened that drawer, I didn't feel sadness or anger. I felt a quiet kind of power. These papers weren't just legal documents. They were proof of what I had worked for. Proof that this car, this freedom, was mine. And no matter how hard he tried to take it from me, the law was on my side. But it wasn't enough just to have the papers. I had to make sure I could do something with them. I wasn't going to let him control the situation any longer. So, I did what I've always done. I figured it out. I started making calls, quiet ones, late at night when the house was still and no one could hear. I called my old mechanic, the one who had fixed my car for years before my son started taking over. I told him what had happened, and he didn't hesitate. "Come by tomorrow," he said. "We'll have a look. It's still your car, isn't it?" I didn't ask for permission. I didn't wait for anyone's approval. I knew what I needed to do. And as I moved forward, I did so calmly, quietly. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me scramble. I wasn't going to let him see how deeply his betrayal had cut. They thought I was stalled, but I was just in gear. I spent the next few days making arrangements, taking small steps to regain what had been taken from me. I didn't rush. I didn't flinch. Every conversation was measured, every action deliberate. I went to the courthouse to make sure all the paperwork was in order, even though I knew it would be. I spoke to a lawyer just to cover my bases. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but I wasn't going to let them take what was rightfully mine. In the meantime, he didn't know. He thought I was too old, too weak to fight back. He thought I was just going to sit there, watching him drive away with my car, with my dignity. But what he didn't understand was that I wasn't broken. I wasn't some frail, helpless woman waiting to be taken care of. I was just waiting for the right moment to act. I didn't need to fight him with noise or anger. I didn't need to make him feel my pain. I just needed to get the car back. And when the time came, I would do it without anyone seeing me coming. They would think I had nothing left. They would think I was the one in the passenger seat. But it was always me at the wheel. Always. And when the day finally came, when everything was in place and ready, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. A calm certainty. The car was mine again, and so was my life. Not just the car, but the power that came with it. The power to choose. The power to drive wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. It wasn't just about the car. It was about me. It was about taking back what was always mine. They thought they had stripped me of everything that made me who I was. But all they had done was give me the space to rebuild. And when I drove away that day, the engine roaring beneath me, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let anyone take my life away again. Not now. Not ever. The day I decided to take control back, I did it in a way that only someone who's lived as long as I have can. Quietly, elegantly, legally. It wasn't enough to just get the car back. That was the easy part. No. I needed to make sure that when I took that step, it would be final. It needed to be done the right way, with every I dotted and every T crossed. I couldn't let anyone come back later and claim I had stolen something. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what had been mine for far too long, what had always been mine. So, I took a trip to the DMV. Not the most glamorous place, but it was necessary. I walked in with my papers, those legal documents that proved the car was mine, not his. The woman behind the counter looked at me with a smile that was nice enough, but she had no idea what I was really there for. She wasn't there to judge me, and I wasn't there to explain myself. I simply handed over the papers, waited while she typed, and then, after a few minutes, she slid the new title across the counter. It was simple, clean. It was official. The car was mine again. I had taken it back, not with noise or chaos, but with paperwork and precision. I didn't rush. I didn't make a scene. The way I saw it, I had already been through the storm. I had weathered the humiliation, the frustration, and now I could stand tall. I didn't need to shout. The truth was enough. That afternoon, I went to the mechanic's garage. The one who had been my ally through all those years, the one who had always treated my car with respect, never questioning my ability to drive it, to maintain it. He'd given me the space I needed, no questions asked. I had him check everything one last time: engine, tires, oil, everything. Not because I didn't trust the car, but because I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted everything to be flawless. Once he was done, I took a deep breath and slid into the driver's seat. My seat. my car. I didn't feel anger as I turned the key. I didn't feel fear either. I felt a quiet pride. A woman who knew her worth and was no longer afraid to claim it. I could feel the weight of my years, the wisdom I'd earned through my life, all swirling in the engine's hum. I wasn't going to let anyone take this away from me again. When I pulled out of the mechanic's lot and onto the road, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The road stretched out before me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. Like I was moving forward, not backward. Not stuck in some corner that someone else had placed me in. I was moving. I was free. When I pulled into my driveway, I knew what would happen next. I knew he would come home. He always did. He'd be surprised, confused, maybe even a little bit angry, but I was ready for that. I didn't need to explain myself to him. He had already made his choices, and I had made mine. As I parked the car in the driveway, I saw him pull up in his own vehicle. I watched him glance at the empty space where my car used to be. He didn't say anything at first. He just stared at the spot, trying to piece things together. The look on his face was all I needed. He knew. He knew the car was mine again, and that he had no say in it. He stepped out of his car and walked toward the front door. I didn't say a word. He didn't need to hear it from me. He didn't need to hear that I had taken back what he'd tried to steal. He had already lost. I had already driven off, leaving him with nothing but his empty driveway and the truth he couldn't deny. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't argued. I had simply taken back my life, step by quiet step, until there was no way for him to ignore it. I had done it all with grace, with strength, and with a steady hand. And when I drove off, I didn't just take my car back. I took back my power, my independence, and my peace. He came home to an empty driveway, and I came home to myself. I could have kept the car. I could have driven it until the wheels fell off. But that wouldn't have been the point, would it? It wasn't about the car itself. It never was. It was about taking back what he had taken from me and proving that I could. Proving that I wasn't someone he could walk over. That I wasn't someone whose life could be controlled without consequence. The car, with all its shiny metal and leather seats, wasn't the thing that mattered. What mattered was the ownership. My name. His attempt to erase me, to rob me of something that had always belonged to me, was what stung the most. So, I decided to give the car away. Not to anyone, but to someone who truly needed it. Someone who would use it with the same care and gratitude that I once had. I didn't tell him. He didn't deserve to know. I didn't owe him any explanations. Instead, I found a woman who needed a car. Someone who couldn't afford one, but worked hard enough to deserve it. She'd been walking everywhere. To work, to the grocery store, to doctor's appointments. I knew what that kind of struggle felt like. I wasn't going to let her struggle like I did for the things I had once worked so hard for. I gave the car to her, with a notarized letter, a simple document that made it official. No questions, no arguments. It was hers now. I didn't expect a thank you, but I could see the look in her eyes when she drove away. That was all the thanks I needed. She was free now, in her own way. Free from the weight of walking everywhere. And in a small way, so was I. When my son tried to call, I didn't pick up. I let the phone ring and ring. I knew what he wanted, what he always wanted, to fix things in his own way, to make sure I knew I was still taken care of. I wasn't interested in his apologies. I wasn't interested in him trying to smooth things over with words that meant nothing. I wasn't his project anymore. I wasn't his responsibility. The first few times he called, I let it go to voicemail. I could hear the frustration in his voice, but I didn't care. I was done letting him think he could fix everything with just a phone call. I had done enough of that, picking up the pieces for him, always being the one to patch things together. He had taken something from me, and now I was taking something from him, not with malice, not with anger, but with quiet resolve. He couldn't catch up. He didn't understand. He never would. This wasn't about a car, about a vehicle, or a possession. It was about control. It was about the years I spent giving up parts of myself, to make sure he was okay, to make sure he never saw the woman behind the mother. And now, I was giving it all up: my silence, my detachment, my peace, just so I could keep something for myself. He had thought it was just the car. He had thought that by taking that from me, I'd have nothing left. But I had something far more important than a car. I had my name on it, and as long as I had that, I had everything I needed. When I handed over the keys to that woman, when I signed those papers, I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel loss. I felt free. He couldn't catch up to me. Not anymore. He had thought he could take everything I had, but he had no idea what was truly mine. It was never about the car. It was about my name on it. And that was something he could never take away. The calls didn't stop coming. First, it was just a few messages him apologizing, telling me how worried he was. He wanted to make things right. He said he'd made a mistake, but I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear any more of his apologies, fake or not. They all felt like a rehearsed performance. The same words I had heard so many times before. The same empty promises. I was just looking out for you, he'd say. I thought I was doing what was best, but his words didn't match the actions. They never had. A few days passed before he showed up at my door, standing there with his hands in his pockets, looking at me like I was supposed to let him in. I didn't move. I didn't invite him in. There was nothing left for him to say. Mom, he began, his voice a mix of frustration and regret. You were reckless. You didn't think this through. I looked at him, really looked at him. The same man who had taken my car without asking, who had locked me out of decisions about my own life, was calling me reckless? He wanted to turn this back on me, make it seem like I was the one who was wrong, the one who had overreacted. But I wasn't wrong. I hadn't been reckless. He had been. I stayed quiet. There was no need to argue, no need to prove myself. I didn't have to defend what I'd done. The silence between us was enough to say everything that needed saying. He was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to play the role of the son who was just looking out for me. But I wasn't his child anymore. I had outgrown that version of myself. His friends started calling too. They were kind enough, but they didn't understand. They all said the same thing. He meant well. They told me I needed to forgive him, that he had only tried to help. I could hear the pity in their voices, as if they thought I was just some fragile woman who needed saving. But I wasn't fragile. I wasn't in need of anyone's rescue. I had my own strength, my own path. I nodded when they spoke. I listened, but I didn't answer. Their words didn't matter. I had long ago stopped looking for anyone's approval. His friends didn't know what it was like to give and give and give until you were nothing but an echo of yourself. They didn't understand what it meant to be made invisible by someone who should have loved you enough to see you for who you were. He tried calling again the next day. He was upset this time, his voice louder, more insistent. Why are you doing this, Mom? I'm just trying to help. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He was still trying to act like I was the one who had made a mistake. But he didn't understand. He wanted me to stay parked in the place he had put me. He wanted me to stay still, to be his responsibility, to need him. But I didn't need him. I never had. Not the way he thought I did. I waited until the voicemail beeped. Then I finally spoke. You're late, son, I said, calm as ever. I've been moving forward for a long time. You've just finally noticed. I hung up the phone and walked away, the words lingering in the air between us like the final chapter of a book I had already read. He couldn't change my mind. Not anymore. I didn't need to explain myself to him, to anyone. I was done trying to make them understand. His apology had come too late. His attempt to fix things had come too late. I had already moved on, and there was no going back. It wasn't about being stubborn or holding a grudge. It was about the simple truth. He wanted me to stay parked, stuck in the past, stuck in his idea of who I was. But I wanted to keep moving, to keep living, to keep growing. I wasn't going to let him edify my future anymore. Not when I had the power to steer my own course. He thought he could control the direction of my life, but he was wrong. I had always been the one behind the wheel. And now it was clear I was the only one who had the right to decide where I went next. It's funny how looking back can feel like looking at someone else's life. I pulled out the old road maps the other day, the ones I'd kept tucked away for years. They were worn, edges curled, the lines faded from being unfolded so many times. These maps had been with me through everything. The long trips, the short drives, the detours. I'd use them to find my way to places, both real and imagined. I could still see the little scribbled marks on them, places I wanted to go, things I had promised to see, dreams I'd tucked into the folds of the paper. There was a photo too, one from a vacation I took years ago with the kids. They were younger then, grinning with their arms flung wide, the wind in their hair. I'd always been the one to drive, the one who kept everything together while they laughed and fought in the back seat. I had been the one taking them everywhere, doctor's appointments, grocery stores, school events. I was the one who made sure the car was always ready for the next trip. I didn't need a reason to go anywhere. I just wanted to move. But now, things were different. Now, I had the car back. Now, I could go anywhere I wanted, anytime I wanted. The roads were mine again. And this time, I wasn't driving to take someone else somewhere. This time, I was driving just for me. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that freedom. The simple joy of driving alone. There was a comfort in the solitude, in the hum of the engine beneath me, in the stillness of the world outside the windows. For so long, I had been everyone's driver. I had been the one in the front seat, the one who gave directions and made decisions. But now, I was the passenger. I was the one with the road before me. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't rushing anywhere. I drove without a destination. No map, no plan, just the road and the sound of my breath. It felt like the world was wide open again, and I could choose where I wanted to go. I wasn't going anywhere in particular. I was simply going. And for the first time in years, I wasn't doing it for anyone else. I wasn't trying to please anyone or make sure they were comfortable. I was doing it for myself. As I drove, I thought about all the years I spent in the driver's seat, physically and emotionally. I had always been the one holding everything together. I had driven through my own sacrifices, through the moments when I felt forgotten or overlooked, when no one thanked me or acknowledged the quiet strength it took to keep going. I had driven through my own loneliness, my own exhaustion, but I didn't complain. I didn't stop. I wasn't sure when it happened, when I started to forget that I was more than just a mother, more than just a caretaker, more than the woman who drove everyone around. But I had forgotten. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that I deserved to drive just for me, to take a moment to breathe and move without anyone else in the back seat. But now, in this quiet drive, I remembered. It was just me and the road. No passengers, no demands, no one telling me where to go or how to get there. Just the freedom to move, to choose, to breathe. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was defined by what others needed from me. I didn't feel like I was only useful when I was in motion for someone else. This time, I was the one who took the wheel. I didn't need anyone's permission. I didn't need anyone's approval. I had earned this, not through any grand gestures, but through the quiet, everyday decisions that led me here. Every mile driven, every sacrifice made, had led me to this moment of peace. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away. This time, I took a drive just for me. And that, for once, was enough. There's something beautiful about finding others who understand what you've been through. Over the years, I had been so focused on doing things alone, handling everything myself, that I forgot how much power there is in sharing a journey with others. That's how I met the mother women, like me, who had lived their own versions of sacrifice, strength, and quiet resilience. Women who had been drivers, not just of cars, but of their own lives. It started small, a conversation here and there. I met one woman in the grocery store parking lot, another at the local cafe, and before long, we had formed a little community. At first, it was nothing more than a few women carpooling to run errands or catch a local event. But as we spent more time together, we realized something important. We weren't just helping each other out with rides. We were helping each other reclaim what had been taken from user independence, our strength, and our connection to the world around us. We started to plan our own meetups, a little group of older women who could share stories, laugh, and enjoy each other's company. It wasn't about being a burden to anyone or being seen as fragile. We were the ones in the front seat now, the ones making choices and deciding where we wanted to go. literally and figuratively. We would meet for lunches, take scenic drives, or even just hang out in the park, enjoying the simple act of being together. The only rule was that there was no hurry. We weren't racing against the clock anymore. We had all the time we needed. There was a kind of freedom in those moments, something I had never imagined I'd feel again. It was more than just a car ride. It was the way we looked out for each other. The way we knew that no matter how old we were, we still had something to contribute, still had stories to share, still had dreams to chase. There was no one judging us, no one telling us we were too old or too weak. We weren't passengers anymore. We were in the front seat together. One afternoon, we took a long drive through the countryside. The windows were down, the wind tousling our hair as we laughed about old memories and new plans. We took turns driving, each of us claiming the wheel for a few miles. And when it was someone else's turn, the rest of us relaxed, knowing we were in good hands. There was something special about that trust that didn't come from age or status, but from the simple knowledge that we were all capable. We were all still moving forward. I couldn't help but smile as I looked around at the women in my car that day. They were all older, like me, but they were full of life, full of stories, full of strength. We shared the same pasts, the same burdens, the same triumphs, but none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that we had each other. We weren't alone anymore. We weren't isolated or forgotten. We had found something powerful, a sisterhood that wasn't defined by our age, but by the way we refused to let the world tell us when we were done. We were driving together now, but we weren't just heading to a destination. We were heading toward a new chapter of our lives, one where we could choose our own paths, our own adventures. No longer held back by the past, no longer defined by the roles we had once played. We were women who had learned how to navigate the world on our own terms, and together, we were unstoppable. And as we pulled into the parking lot that afternoon, laughing and chatting, I realized something important. The road was ours again. We had claimed it, each in our own way, and now we were making the journey together. There was no looking back. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living, and no one could take that away from us. The car sat in the driveway, a quiet reminder of everything I had been through. It wasn't just a car anymore. It was a symbol of strength, of resilience, of the years I had spent pushing forward, despite the obstacles, despite the betrayal. It wasn't the kind of thing I could just hand over lightly. No, it deserved to be passed down, but only to someone who truly understood what it meant, someone who would appreciate it, not just as a set of wheels, but as a legacy. I knew exactly who that someone was. My granddaughter. I had watched her grow up, watched her become the young woman she was now, strong, independent, and so much more than the world ever gave her credit for. She had a fire in her, one I recognized. She had the same quiet strength I had, the same quiet determination to carve her own path. And now, I was going to make sure she had the tools to do it. I wasn't going to let the car be something she inherited just because it was a family heirloom. I was going to make sure it was hers, because she deserved it. So, one afternoon, I called her over. We sat on the porch together, the car parked in the driveway, the same car that had once been the center of so much pain and loss. I handed her the keys, along with the title. She took them from me, her hands trembling just a little bit. But she didn't say a word. She didn't have to. She knew what it meant. He won't get the keys, I told her quietly. You will. And when you drive it, you'll drive it for all of us. You'll drive it with your own hands, your own story. You'll take it where you want to go. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't. She looked at me with those bright eyes, full of promise, and nodded, understanding. This wasn't just a car. This was a piece of us, a piece of me, passed down to her, so she could carry it forward. She would be the one to make the road her own, just like I had. I made sure the next woman to drive it would never be told she couldn't. She would never be told she was too old, too weak, too anything. The road was hers, just like it had always been mine. I had spent so many years keeping things together, trying to prove myself worthy of love, of respect, of acknowledgement. But now I was at peace with what I had built. The car, the story, The strength these things would live on through her. When she drove, she would carry my story with her, but she would also create her own. And when she took that first drive, I knew she would be ready. She had already shown me she was more than capable. She was fierce, with the wind in her hair, and no one could ever take that from her. When I'm gone, they'll say I was fierce too. They'll say I was the one who taught them how to drive through life, how to keep moving forward, how to never let anyone tell you that you couldn't. And they'll be right. Because I had learned it, all along the road was never the destination. It was the journey, and I had made it my own. Now, it was hers. He thought a card and a bouquet would fix everything. He thought that after all the damage, after everything he'd taken from me, he could just throw a few words on a piece of paper and pretend everything was fine. It started with a card. He left it on my doorstep, neatly tucked inside an envelope with my name written in bold letters, like it was some kind of declaration. I didn't open it, not right away. Instead, I stared at it for a long time, almost as if I could see through it, see through the words he had carefully written. I knew what it was going to say before I even picked it up. It would be full of apologies, full of regrets, full of excuses. I wasn't interested in any of it, not anymore. But he didn't stop there. He left more. The next day, I found a bouquet of flowers on the hood of my car. It wasn't a big one, just a simple bunch of roses wrapped in cellophane, but it was enough. Enough to make it clear that he thought he could buy my forgiveness, that he thought I would be swept away by some flowers and empty words. I stood there for a moment, looking at the flowers, wondering what he thought I was going to do. Maybe he expected me to swoon, to be so moved by the gesture that I would forget everything else. Maybe he thought I was desperate for his attention, for his affection. But I wasn't desperate. I wasn't looking for anything from him anymore. I didn't pick up the bouquet. Instead, I just let it sit there, sitting in the rain that had started to fall. The wet petals began to sag, the colors blurring as the water soaked through them. It was a pathetic sight, really. The flowers weren't going to fix what he had done. They weren't going to erase the years of being ignored, of being controlled, of being made to feel like I was invisible. And then, I did something that felt right. I got in my car and started the engine. The rain pouring down harder now. The sound of the engine was the only thing I could hear above the rain. I drove through it. The windshield wipers moving in rhythm with the downpour, the card still in my passenger seat, the bouquet still sitting on the hood. I let the rain wash over everything he had left behind. As I drove, the flowers became a blur in the rearview mirror, fading away with each mile. It was as though they had never been there at all. I didn't need his gifts. I didn't need his apologies. I didn't need him. By the time I reached the end of the road, I knew something important. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't waiting for him to change, for him to apologize, for him to finally see me for who I was. I had already seen it. I had already seen through the performance. I wasn't going to play his game anymore. When I got home, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. He had left his card, his bouquet, his attempts at winning me over. But all I saw was the same old thing. Empty gestures. False promises. I left the card on the windshield, the flowers still sitting there, and I walked inside, feeling nothing but the weight of my own quiet power. He thought he could fix it with a bouquet, but I had learned something long ago. You can't fix what's been broken with flowers. You fix it by walking away, by letting the rain wash away everything that doesn't serve you. He didn't get it, but I did. And that was enough. I found a small cottage, tucked away at the edge of town. It wasn't grand or flashy, but it was mine, and it had a driveway just for me. For the first time in a long time, I had a place that was mine alone, a space where I could breathe, where I didn't have to explain myself, where I could just be. It was cozy, just the right size, and I filled it with the simple things that made me feel at home. Soft rugs, a comfortable chair by the window, shelves filled with books and photos from my life. It was the life I had built for myself, brick by brick, and it felt good. It felt right. The first few months were quiet. I spent my time unpacking, organizing, and getting used to the rhythm of my own days. I didn't need anyone telling me what I should be doing or when I should be doing it. For the first time, I could move at my own pace, take each moment as it came. I found joy in the small things, like the way the morning light came through the kitchen window, or the sound of birds singing just outside my door. It was peaceful. I started driving to the farmer's market every week. At first, I thought it would just be another errand, something to do because I had to. But it became something I looked forward to, something that was just for me. There was no rush, no pressure. I didn't have a schedule. I didn't have to be anywhere or do anything for anyone. I was just there, moving through the market at my own pace, chatting with the vendors, picking out fresh fruits and vegetables, taking my time. Every Sunday, I'd get in my car and head out without any particular destination in mind. I'd take the long way, winding down unfamiliar streets, discovering new corners of the world that I'd never had the time to notice before. It didn't matter if I took a wrong turn or if I ended up somewhere I didn't expect. It was my time, my space, my choice. Every Sunday, I choose a new road. Every mile is mine. I never used to have that kind of freedom. For so long, I had driven for others, taking care of everyone's needs, always putting myself last. But now, I could choose the road. I could choose where to go and when to turn. And that felt like the truest kind of freedom, to take my time, freedom to go wherever I wanted, without looking back, without answering to anyone. I could feel the weight of the years lifting off my shoulders as I drove, the hum of the engine beneath me, like a reminder that I was moving forward. It didn't matter where I went, as long as I was going. The world was wide open, and for the first time, I wasn't being held back by anything or anyone. And when I returned home, I would park my car in my little driveway, the one I could call my own. I would walk inside, feeling the warmth of the home I had created for myself. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that was enough. I wasn't lost anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to tell me what to do. I had built a life that fit me, that allowed me to take my time and enjoy the simple pleasures. Every Sunday, every drive, every moment spent in my little cottage was mine to savor. It was a life I had made for myself, one small step at a time. And with each mile I drove, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. For as long as I could remember, I had kept a journal tucked away in the glove box of my car. It wasn't a few pages, scribbled thoughts, reflections on the road ahead. But it was mine. It was the one place I could pour my thoughts, my frustrations, my fears, and my hopes without worrying about how it would sound to anyone else. Every time I turned the key, I would hear the faint rustle of pages, like the car itself was holding on to my secrets, and I'd find a quiet moment to write. In the stillness of those drives, I could finally tell the truth. I never shared those journals with anyone. They were just for me, a way to keep my thoughts from spilling out when I wasn't ready, a way to hold on to the pieces of myself that had been lost or hidden or taken. But when everything changed, when I finally took back control of my life, I knew it was time to speak those truths. Not just for me, but for him, for the ones who thought they could silence me. The journals were still in the glove box when I handed over the keys to my car for the last time. I knew it would be the end of one chapter, but it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like release. I decided to send the last letter, the one I had written in the quiet of the car, to him. He would understand now. He would see it in black and white, what he had done and what I had endured. I had written the last entry just before I handed over the car to my granddaughter. It was a simple note, nothing grand, just the truth. They took my steering. I wrote my story. That was it, but it was all he needed to know. It wasn't a letter filled with anger or rage. It was just a simple fact. He had taken something from me, the car, the control, my independence, but I had never been truly lost. I had been writing my story all along. So, I took that letter and carefully folded it inside the final photo of the Quran image of it, parked in the driveway, the sun setting behind it. It was the last image of the car I would ever have. I had sent that photo to my granddaughter too, so she could see how the car had looked before it became hers. But the letter, the one with the quiet words, went into the envelope, addressed to him, the man who once thought he could control the story. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't care if I got one. This was my closure, my peace, and I was giving it to him in the most silent way I knew how. I mailed it, slipped the envelope in the box, and watched it disappear from my life. It was done. There was something deeply satisfying about it. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was final. He would read it. And I imagined him sitting in his quiet place, reading those words, and realizing, too late, that the story had always been mine to tell. He had stolen so much from me over the years, my voice, my car, my autonomy, but the one thing he couldn't steal was my ability to write my own truth. I thought about the journals, all those quiet entries I had made over the years, the ones he would never see. They weren't for him. They were for me. They were a testament to the life I had lived, the battles I had fought, and the strength I had always carried, even when no one noticed. As the car disappeared from my life, so did the need to prove anything to anyone. I had written my truth, and now it was out there on paper, in the mail, sealed in silence. He would read it, and when he did, he would understand. They took my steering, but I wrote my story. And in the end, that was all that mattered. It happened one afternoon, just as the light was starting to fade. I was driving through town, taking the long way home, the way I always did now. I wasn't in any hurry. I had nowhere to be but where I was. The streets were quiet, just the way I liked it, and I was lost in the hum of my car, the simple sound of the engine beneath me. There was peace in that sound, something calming in the way it filled the air around me. I was moving, but it didn't feel like I was rushing toward anything. It was enough just to be. And then I saw him. He was walking down the street, head down, hands shoved in his pockets like he had somewhere to be. He didn't see me at first. I didn't make any move to get his attention. There was no need. We had already said everything we needed to say in our own quiet ways. But when he finally looked up, our eyes met for the briefest moment. There was no surprise in his gaze. There was no apology or attempt to make it right. There didn't need to be. We both knew what had happened. We both knew what this was. He had tried to make me small, to take things from me that weren't his to take, and I had taken them back quietly, without asking for anyone's approval. For a split second, I thought he might wave. He had that look in his eyes, the one that said he might try to make some kind of gesture, some small attempt at reaching out, but I didn't wave. I didn't even slow down. I didn't need to. I didn't feel anger, didn't feel the need to confront him or settle old scores. It wasn't about that anymore. There was no rage, no outburst, just the sound of my engine pulling away from him, pulling me forward, pulling me toward my own life. I didn't need his permission to move forward. I didn't need his validation. As I drove away, I felt a strange sense of finality. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to prove. It was over. That moment, that brief glance, was the last one we would ever share. He was still standing there, watching me go, and I realized that for the first time, it didn't matter. It wasn't about him. It was about me. I passed him on the street. I didn't wave. I didn't need to. And as I turned the corner and the distance between us grew, I felt something in me settle, something I hadn't realized had been unsettled for so long. I didn't need him. I didn't need to say goodbye with words or gestures. The goodbye had already happened long before that moment. All that was left was the sound of my engine, steady and sure, pulling me forward into the life I had built for myself. No rage, no words, just the sound of my engine pulling away. And in that sound, I knew I had found peace. I'm long gone now, but he still doesn't know. He thought I was lost, thought I was weak, thought I was just sitting by while he took everything from me. But the truth is, I was never lost. I was driving home. He thought I couldn't drive, that I was too old, too fragile. But I was steering the whole time, every turn, every mile, every moment while he was busy trying to control the wheel. I was already on my way, quietly, elegantly. Now, I've left that life behind, and he's still searching for me in the rearview mirror, chasing something that's already gone. He can't catch up. I've taken the road that's mine, and I won't look back. I was the storm behind the wheel, and now I'm the road he can't find.